Alrighty then, crew, now we are looking at the City of Crowns, the only expansion for Paladins of the West Kingdom, because it is complex enough of a game by itself that they thought one expansion will do it. So what is different in setup from this is this main board is now ridiculous. It's there's an extra one of a bit of this added this side, and we have an additional board added on to the left hand side because it wasn't long enough before. Other changes are, I mean, there will be gameplay changes during it, but during setup there will be extra things added underneath, on top. You get another space for a townsfolk and another space for an outrider, but I don't have space here to put anything in, so I haven't shown it. There are 4 new Paladin cards, so whereas in the base game there was 12, there is now 16. Everyone will be given a face-down King's Order card. This is like a secret objective to score at the end of the game. Every player will get their own extra little board that goes on the side, as well as a spare greenhouse, I've also forgotten what it's called, workshop, as well as a spare workshop and a new marker. This time it's called the diplomacy marker. As far as setup, that's all that's different. So, what does the expansion City of Gold actually give us, and what does we do? So, as I briefly mentioned, the easy one to talk about is with the Paladins themselves. As I say, there are 4 new Paladins that go into this deck now, and you'll know which ones are to do with it with the expansion, because they'll have a little crown at the bottom right. Instead of 3 Paladins that you draw during Phase 5, you draw 4, and as normal, you will put one on here as your active one. You will put one on top of the deck. You will also put one at the bottom, as usual, but the 4th one gets completely removed from the game. So we do not... so there's no chance of that one coming back into rotation. So that is the difference when it comes to the Paladins themselves. The other changes are to do with actions. So now we've got this board over here with a whole new action, and as I sort of showed, there is this board here. All that really does is gives you an increased faith and strength requirement, extra spaces to put stuff, and a discard pile for other cards. But with your player board, during the action phases, you do have 2 new actions that you can do now. You've got the muster action, and you've got the negotiate action. But before we go over to those 2 and how you deal with that, on this board, much like the King's Favours cards, where you have spaces to put workers to get stuff, you also have that on these cards. So if you look on them, each of these cards on the left hand side shows a colour of a worker, so your red, your blue, your anything, and your green. Underneath them is a cost, so the only one so far is here where it says 1 provision. So to do this card, it would be 1 blue worker, 1 provision, and you get whatever's at the bottom. So in this case, a diplomacy, flip a debt or 2 coins, a criminal, you'd also get a suspicion, and a prey action. Quite simply, put a worker on there, take that action, and that's done. The difference between these muster cards and these favour cards is at the end of the round of favour cards, the workers go back into the supply. On here, they do not. They stay on there because players can collect these cards and will collect any workers that are on them. So that is one of the things you can do on your turn. Now, looking at these actions, you've got your muster. So, it requires 1 black, 1 of anything, 1 green. And what you are doing, and it will cost, attribute-wise, you will need to have any of them. What you need to have is denoted on the card itself. As far as cost is concerned, it's all to do with where this dude is, where this diplomat is. So if you look in between the cards, depending on which one you want to take, and you cannot take the one that he is on, there is a provision cost in between them. So if I needed this one, because the difference is 1, 2, 3 provisions, I would have to pay 3. If it was this one, it would just be the 1 provision. But then what you do is, say I wanted this one, I would pay 1 provision, put him on there. Well, I'd say I'd put him on there. I'd put him there ready. I'd have to make sure I have that attribute, so 1 in strength. You always have to have at least 1 in diplomacy. That's why this is showing. And what you do is you simply take the card and any workers on it, and you place it there above your board. Firstly, that gets you the I can't remember what I was going to say there. The worker that is potentially on it, and then at the end of the game, for every 2 that you've done, you will get a point. I feel like there's something else you get for it, and I cannot remember. Nope, that's it. Cool. So that is how the muster action works. And as you go through these decks of cards, they will get more, requirements will be higher. That's the muster. Negotiate has 2 actions dedicated to it. Entrust and enlist. So, but they both cost the same, which is 1 red, 1 something, 1 blue. Once again, we are over here, and we are looking at these three cards here and this top deck here. This is a whole deck of cards. You are allowed to buy directly from the top of the deck, and the cost is whatever they are next to. So 1, 1, 2, 3, or a debt. And depending on whether you are taking an enlist or entrust action, you are either doing the top or the bottom of the card. A little bit like the Age of Artisans tools expansion of Architects. So, if you do entrust, you are looking at the top half of the top part of the card. You firstly have to make sure your diplomacy attribute has been met, which is on the top left. So in this case 0, so it's nice and easy to take. And what you are doing is you are instantly taking the action that it is depicting. So in this case, this is actually a commission action, which is this one, you know, so with those dudes. So for all intents and purposes, you are taking that action as if you had placed the units on that space. But what you are doing it with a temporary boost of the faith by 1. So if you were missing just that 1 faith that you required, you could then take it with that. And like I say, for all intents and purposes, you are doing that action. The only scenario which you are doing, which is different, is when you are doing the attack one. So if there was a card that allowed you to do an attack, you cannot pay the silver to reduce the requirement there. But that is the top. And I'm just going to rescue a card. Ooh, that fell down. Oh. Lovely. So that is the top. For the bottom part, the enlist, as I say, you are looking at the bottom. This one could potentially have different requirements of attributes, but you are looking at the bottom left. So in this case, it would be 1 influence. What you're doing is you are taking the card. Oh, and with the entrust, when you're doing the top action, when you've done it, you discard the card. It's gone. But with this one, you are taking it. You are increasing your diplomacy attribute, as denoted by the lightning bolt, and you are placing it under here. And why are you doing that? Well, the reason why you do that is for endgame scoring. There are 4 different symbols. Your board, everyone is different, but every board starts with 1. There are 4 different symbols. And for every set of 4 you have, you will get either 0, 2, 5 or 9 points. Very nice. If at any point you have 3 of the same, so for example, say I don't know, I got 3 of those cross symbols. If I was the first person to do so, there are these 4 cards on here. So you see how there's that, 3 of the cross symbols? That would allow me to take this card. The Goth Cleric card, I guess, is what it looks like. Firstly, you have a instant action symbol, which will allow you to do whatever. So in this case, flip a deck card. But additionally to that, this new icon is around, the moon symbol. That is essentially something that happens when you pass your turn. So if you had this card, when you pass your turn, you'll receive one black worker ready for the next round. So you'll always have one additional worker. And that is what those do. The end of the game, there is I guess there's a little bit of difference with the scoring. Firstly, you are calculating again where your diplomacy marker is. If you achieve your secret one, it's as if you've done the second one, so it's the 6-pointer if you've achieved that. Your collected muster cards, so it's 1 point per 2. And your negotiate cards, so for every set. And that is City of Crowns, the expansion. What a long boy.